and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Alana, and in today's video I'm going to be giving you some travel advice for backpacking in Central America. Now, I have traveled abroad to places like Thailand and Peru, but honestly I've spent most of my time abroad in Central America. So this video is just a list of things that I've learned throughout my experience that I want to pass along to you. So my first tip is actually know a little bit of Spanish. So if this doesn't really apply if you're only going for like 5 days or a week, but if you're going to be backpacking through Central America for like an extended amount of time, over a month I would say, knowing some basic Spanish is like your savior. Because if you know how to order your food, how to say the foods that you're allergic to or don't like, how to ask for directions, how to ask for prices of things, it really makes your life a whole lot easier because you're not constantly pulling out a translator. If you just like memorize how to say those phrases, it makes your travel a lot easier. Or if you just write those phrases down somewhere that you would see every day, I don't know. But yeah, practice your basic Spanish because I wouldn't say that I'm great at Spanish, but I have a basic level that has helped me a lot when traveling in Latin America. But anyways, tip number 2 is don't be afraid of the public buses. I know in like the United States, I never use the bus system because we are all based in our own cars, but honestly in Latin America it's really easy to get around on public buses, whether it's within one country and using that country's public bus system, or there's a system called Tica Bus, which if you don't know, a nickname for Costa Ricans is ticos and ticas. So that's kind of where that name comes from. But that bus runs, I think, all the way from Panama up through Guatemala. So the price obviously varies on distance, but that is the cheapest way to get around. Obviously you can fly, but like some places, like here in Nicaragua, it was actually kind of expensive to fly into because it's so not touristy. It's actually kind of difficult to fly into, but the bus systems are always your best bet. And piggybacking off of that, tip number 3 is if you are going to be relying on public buses, make sure what you pack, you can pack onto yourself and be able to move quickly and like have agility, I guess is how you would say that. Because if you have this giant wheelie bag that you're like rolling behind you on the street, it kind of makes you, one, more obviously a tourist if it's not already obvious by the bags on your back, but it also kind of weighs you down. And so if there was an issue, you can't just like run away because you have this giant suitcase. So that's my third tip, is to pack light and only pack the essentials. Now, some essentials that I would recommend are, yes, Central America is near the equator and it is a very tropical climate. However, when you go to like the volcanoes or the mountainous areas in the middle of the countries, it gets chilly. So I would recommend at least packing one thing for colder weather. And also, if you're prone to mosquito bites like I am, I got 106 mosquito bites here in Costa Rica. That was fun. This is when I learned to always pack mosquito repellent and either like Benadryl cream or calamine lotion to soothe the mosquito bites that still occur. That's not a complaint, that's just if you know you're prone to mosquito bites, be prepared. Tip number 4, which is to remain open to the experience. I know it's easy to go into a trip and look at all these small countries on a map and be like, oh, okay, I'll bang these out in 2 months and visit everything. And while you can do that, and some people enjoy traveling that way, what I've found is that by remaining open-minded, it allows you to stay open to experiences that you may have never even imagined planning, or meeting people that you could have never expected. And also staying open-minded in the sense that like every country you go to is going to be different from where you were from, and that's not a bad thing. That is just something to observe and be aware of and not complain about, but just observe. Kind of like in yoga and meditation, they say like, you know, don't judge your thoughts, don't attach to your thoughts, just observe them and then let them go. And that's kind of the mindset that I like to use, not only in travel, but I guess in my whole life. If you haven't heard of the book Total Meditation by Deepak Chopra, highly recommend. But next tip, which I guess would be tip number 5, is if you don't already know, I didn't know this before coming to Nicaragua, but Nicaragua, El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala all have this joint visa system where if you get a visa entering into Nicaragua, then you can travel within those 4 countries on the same visa without having to get re-stamped through customs. So I think that's pretty cool. That kind of makes it easier to move about in those 4 countries specifically, and it kind of makes me more likely to want to visit Guatemala after this. I have no plans, so don't hate me if I don't go, but yeah, it just kind of opens the opportunity a little bit more. And then speaking of ease of transportation between countries, I know we already talked about buses and we talked about that visa, but tip number 6 would be stay in Selena hostels. I know probably everybody has heard of Selena hostels at this point, but this is what I exclusively use in Costa Rica and Panama, because Selena is just, they're so well organized. Like, there's a location in most of the popular places, at least in Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico, and Guatemala. Not so much in Nicaragua, but they're just so impressively organized. The way that they have locations in most of the popular areas in Central America, and they also provide like van transfers in between locations for a certain price, so they really make your vacation a little bit easier. And even though they're a hostel, so you can stay in like the 14-bed dorm, which I did in Puerto Viejo, and people always think like, the dorms with 14 people, how do you ever sleep? Wasn't your stuff stolen? No, I slept great because I was so tired from being in the sun all day, and all of my stuff was fine. I brought a lock, I put my valuables in the locker, and all of my clothes, who would want my clothes? Like, I hadn't done laundry all month anyways. Like, let's be real. And if you don't want to stay in the dorms, they also have private rooms that you can rent. They're a little bit more expensive, but then you're in a private room in the same hostel atmosphere, so you can meet people and mingle, but also have your alone time and private space. Selena also has a co-live program where if you have like an online job and you're a digital nomad, you can pay a flat rate and get access to staying in Selena and access to their co-working space for a full month. So this isn't a Selena ad, I just think it's really cool what they're doing and how they've built their business. Okay, 2 final tips. Tip number 7 is where there is tourist development, the prices have gone up. So this is true anywhere you go, it's not just Central America, but when you think of like, oh, Costa Rica, Panama, those are like the very touristy places that have been hyped up about Central America, and so a lot of tourism has been going there. There's a lot of infrastructure there for the tourism, and so that means that they're gonna up the price because they know that people are coming in. Versus like Nicaragua or El Salvador, Honduras, or some parts of Mexico, not Cancun and Tulum, but like the less popular areas of Mexico, it's actually a much lower cost of living than countries like Costa Rica and Panama. Also, the countries that use US dollar, Panama and El Salvador, have higher prices, obviously, because they're just in US dollars. However, the other countries, it's good to have local currency, especially the smaller the town, the more you need small bills. So when you need to pay, you can't use card in the tiny towns. You usually can't use the biggest bill, like when you exchange your money, you usually get a bunch of the biggest bills. No, break those as fast as you can before you get out into the boonies, because yeah, then you just won't be able to pay for anything, and I ran into that in Mexico and Costa Rica and here. So yeah, I guess that was one big money tip all wrapped up into one, but the final tip, number 8, is if you're really trying to cut back on your costs and you don't want to pay for even a dorm in a hostel, another really cheap way to extend your backpacking and kind of take your time is to do work exchanges. These usually aren't paid, but they give you a free place to land and a place to sleep at night. And after living on the road for over a year now, having a place to sleep at night is something that I'm like super grateful for, like every night, because I think a lot of people take that for granted. So on websites like workaway.info, I've talked about them before, I've used them twice. It was, you know, you're a volunteer, so you can't expect like silver platter service. But the lower your living costs are, the longer you can travel and the longer you can continue this lifestyle. And I think that's kind of the point of backpacking, is you want to continue traveling and travel as long as you can on the money that you have. So if you're interested, I also made a video talking about how to make money on the road. You can check that out in the cards here. And if you have any other video requests, be sure to leave them down in the comments below. If you like this kind of travel info content, show me your thumbs. And be sure to subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I hope to see you again in my next video. Bye guys!